Maybe don't know.
This time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 114 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I'm sitting here in the Power Company spaceship in the cold and damp Red River Gorge, where our time is coming to an inevitable close. It's been a busy trip. I recorded around 18 conversations, something like that, including some multi-coach board meetings since I've been here, and I think there are a few more to go. It might be an addiction, people. I'm just saying, it might be an addiction, but it's to your benefit. I am, however, going to be leaving the cold behind for a few days to head to the Bayou City Classic in Houston with Nate at Momentum Silver Street. We're going to be doing a few workshops there. We'll also be doing a few semi-private sessions, and we've got some spots open for those. And there will be sign-up links to all of that right there in the show notes in your pocket supercomputer. So if you're going to be around Houston, please come out and see us. We would love to meet, love to talk, and love to work with you guys a little bit. From here, we head to Lander for a month to train, then to Waco, and then to 5 weeks in Australia. And I'm about to start reaching out to Australian gyms about hosting workshops. So if you are a gym down under who is interested, hit me up. info@powercompanyclimbing.com. Or if you're a climber in Australia, you want us to come to your gym, talk to the gym management, tell them to hit us up. info@powercompanyclimbing.com. Pass it on. Enough about my plans, though. Today's guests are two of the women that I've really looked forward to talking with, and I look forward to talking with more. Esther Smith and Ava Lopez. I had the opportunity to sit down with them this past summer in Salt Lake City and record a couple of chats. And you'll be hearing one soon with Ava that's all about what the best hangboard protocols are or aren't, and if there is a best. That's coming soon, but you'll have to stay tuned for that, as well as more from Esther. And if you aren't familiar with Ava and Esther, Esther Smith is a physical therapist and owner of Grassroots Physical Therapy in Salt Lake City. So many climbers that I know swear by her work, and she's had several really great interviews with Training Beta with Neely Quinn over there. So go check out those episodes. They're really informative. And Ava Lopez is a climber, coach, and scientist from Spain, and certainly the most well-known finger strength researcher on the planet. And if you haven't heard of her, the fact is you probably got really weak fingers. Just saying. In this episode, the three of us sit down to discuss injury on a more global scale, how to cope with it, and get back to this thing that we all love so much.
Maybe don't know.
She kept herself feeling like a climber, even though she could hold only 200 grams. How do you still feel like a climber when you can't hold a water bottle without pain?
First off, I wanted to say that Nate and I were talking last night about your presentation, and both of us were a little surprised at the direction it went, and that you didn't mention finger strength once during the presentation, and we both really appreciated that. We both loved it. And we thought that it was one of the best climbing presentations we've ever seen.
Yes.
Because it was focused more on the full experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was simple. The message was powerful. more about the experience, and you have this growth mindset that I think is really, really important, that a lot of people miss when they're going to talk to people and try to inspire people or motivate people. They want to focus on the numbers and the end goals and the outcomes, and your focus was on the experience and turning everything into a learning opportunity. And that was really great to hear from someone whose name is made through research.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the modalities I practice, research. But my field really is climbing.
Yeah, that's important to remember.
I am a climber.
Yeah.
In the first place. And then everything came behind. First, I'm a climber. Then I like training. Then because I like training people. And then because I learn things, I like to share those things with people, with climbers. And then because I like everything all together, I like research, because it's like all the things together. Learning and sharing and thinking in my experience, applied to the field, and
your passion for it was very evident. And when Nate and I were talking last night, the only word I could come up with was that you were twinkling every time you talked about, I have a new project. This training allows me to transform into someone who can do that project. And you twinkled, you were excited, you were glowing every time you talked about that. And I thought that was really fun to see, that it wasn't dry like a lot of science can seem, or like a translation of a blog post can seem. There's all this excitement and this passion behind it. So I loved it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you for making it happen, for bringing her here. I wasn't really sure what to expect from it, and that was exciting for me. I go to these things to learn oftentimes, and you have this syllabus, what you're about to hear, so you're prepared. So it was kind of fun going in knowing Ava. I mean, I knew of Ava as a climber before I knew of her as a researcher, but now in my head she's a researcher. So coming in and seeing this side of it was really fun.
Yeah, you're welcome. I didn't know what to expect either. We designed it as just a bit of a platform for Ava to jump off from and to share her story with us and our community. And I think that it just illuminated how fortunate we are to have somebody like her doing this research, but having it be born out of the passion that she has for climbing and for her own training, and then how that can be applied to others, and to her passion for data collection that will show in her own self-injury management and her performance goals. And I think it's so awesome to have somebody who blends all of those aspects into what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually probably pretty similar to how I approach physical therapy and related to working with climbers. Is I was first a climber, and I love the movement of it and the experience of it, and could see that there could be a lot of things done to help foster less injury in climbing and improve the rehab capabilities and education for climbers, because a lot of times people think that climbing is just a sport that you're going to get toasted doing
right
after some amount of maybe decades. And Ava's an example of how that's not true. And many people are, how you can keep climbing and through training and through, injury management and injury prevention. It's a sport that you can foster a ton of longevity in. And then for me, like the best learning I've had about managing injury are really through my own. So, and again, so it's kind of born out of a passion for oneself, and then the passion for the community, sharing this information, and helping to kind of educate and foster our sport.
Yeah, and ultimately all of this is so that we can help ourselves, help our clients, help other people get to spend more time doing this thing they love at a level that they want to do it. I think ultimately that's what injury prevention, injury management, training, it ends up in that same place, that we want people to be able to spend more time doing this in a safe, healthy way at a high level. You talked about, Ava, in your presentation, several injuries that you've had, and most recently you had an elbow injury. And someone in the crowd asked something really interesting, in that, do you think there's something you could have done differently to avoid that? And I think, that's where I think we should maybe start here, is what can climbers do to ensure that they can continue climbing, to try and avoid injury. I don't think that there's any way we can avoid them completely. But what can we do? What can we pay attention to? And how, maybe even how much injury is unavoidable?
Error
why?
is unavoidable. That's true, but it's also true that you can prevent many injuries only being well educated about training.
Yeah.
Because many injuries, scientists say that it's not overuse injuries, it's training error injuries.
Right.
Because you are not accomplishing the principles of training many times. Individualization is the most important one, in my opinion. You are only searching on the internet about videos from very strong climbers, and you imagine that if you do that, you are going to be like them, and this is not true.
Right.
Sometimes they are strong regardless they do. Doesn't matter what they do, they are going to be strong because they are talented in the first place. And then they are genetically well predisposed to be like that, among other reasons. Perhaps they are doing well also, but they are very strong. That's why they are doing those exercises. And this is the first mistake. You are not accomplishing the principle of individualization. Then specificity. If you are climbing in a crack with only vertical walls, perhaps you are not going to need doing so much campusing, because you don't need the ability to jump to large holds. Perhaps you only try 11s or 12s. And in my opinion, campusing is for athletes from 13B or so, among other things.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, the first measure to take in mind is accomplishing the principles of training, and then elaborating a good planning, progressing slowly but continuously.
Yeah, and we want to go really fast.
Yeah, without rush. That's the problem.
Yeah.
We have a rush. We are in a hurry for everything in life nowadays.
Yeah.
And you need your body create the adaptations. You need some you need several weeks for that, or years in another physical capabilities.
Yeah, I thought it was really important that you showed slides of your first 10B and your a few early 511s, and I thought those were really important for people to see that you started from the same place.
Of course.
And that as you got better over years, you showed the number of years that was between 510 and 514 and how your body changed over those years. And I thought that was really important and a really simple way to show that, that it's not a really fast process, and being in a hurry isn't the way. There's so much to learn from those early days.
Yeah, especially for the repertoire, motor and perceptive and psychological.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I have noticed these changes in my mind only coping with weird movements, awkward. You say that word?
Yep.
Awkward movements. They are only in hard routes. But you need to create that capability in your mind for coping awkward positions and not giving up to applying force in that position because you are not comfortable.
Right.
You want to finish the route already because you are not comfortable. Yeah, and this is adaptation, not very slowly to be created, because you need to put effort and you need to cope in a steady and progressive way to those type of routes, for example. And this is slow. You need time.
Absolutely.
And you need perhaps someone coaches you well for not giving up and expecting the benefits and the improvements, because they are going to come. But if you are in a hurry,
it goes bad.
Probably if you are going to get injured because you are doing the movement in the most inefficient position in your shoulders, as Esther says in her articles, for example. So, it's a great topic.
You work mostly with climbers, right, Esther?
Correct. Yeah.
Is that something that you see pretty often? Is people in a hurry to progress through the grades? And I like that Ava just mentioned that progressing through the grades slowly, you really learn not only physically how to get into these awkward positions safely, but also psychologically to be comfortable in those awkward positions. And I assume that's something that you see relatively often. Is that the case, that people are just hurrying through?
Yeah, definitely is part of it. I think, as you guys were saying, injuries happen. And, many are unavoidable just because of the demands of the sport. But it's less about repeated overuse, more about misuse. And whether that's happening on the wall or in our off-the-wall training exercises, form with hangboarding, pull-ups, push-ups, antagonist exercises. So part of what's being rushed, I think, is the foundational knowledge of really how to set our body up for success and how to know about this machine that we're using.
Right.
And we're putting through these extreme demands as climbers that don't exist in other sports. And we have to understand, how do our limbs attach to our trunk?
Right.
And what are these foundational areas where we have a ton of upper extremity demand, overhead, overhanging, with load, with dynamic force, strain happening through this system, 4 or 5 times a week
Yeah.
for hours and hours and hours with little recovery.
Right.
How is the situation being, sort of what's the awareness level of how our toes interact with the wall, and then how that limb or legs meet back up with our trunk, and how we could improve the efficiency of our lower extremities into our core, into our trunk, then offset injuries in our upper extremity by helping to unload our fingers, our elbows, and our shoulders. So I think part of the rapidness of climbing and the joy of climbing and the movement of climbing that we see, a lot of people getting into it, there's this whole bypass of understanding our body structure.
Yeah.
And I see it in the top level elite professional climbers that there's so much like light bulbs kind of going off when they understand their anatomy a little bit. They're educated on the mechanics of these body parts and then how to train that part of the machine to improve performance, efficiency, and injury prevention. And in injury, we like to rush through that and we want that to be done and over quickly. But our body has these physiologic processes that it determines the time it takes to heal tissue.
Right.
And so again, well, what do we know about tissue healing? A tendinopathy, a sprain, an inflammatory process. We know these physiologic mechanisms, and we kind of know some time frames, and we know how to facilitate a healing environment. So a lot of times there's this pace to injury that has to be accepted. But then I love what Ava has done with, when we were discussing her elbow injury, was she kept herself feeling like a climber, even though she could hold only 200 grams of load in her hand.
Right.
How do you still feel like a climber when you can't hold a water bottle without pain? And that is, I think, such an interesting thing about climbing, training, progression is how do we know injury is going to happen to most of us at some point. But it goes to also if you're not injured, like what are you doing when you're training, and how does training actually reference actually climbing and being a climber and performance there, and how do we connect kind of this imagery and visualization and kind of mental coping aspects and stuff. I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's, maybe that's part of why people rush through injuries, because they've lost their identity as a climber.
Yeah, true.
When they can't climb, I have to get back to the gym. I have to get back on the wall. I have to be hangboarding or whatever it is. So can we talk a little about that, Ava, about your injury and what you did to continue feeling like a climber and be able to work around this severe, it was lateral elbow tendinosis, right?
That's true. Yeah. First, I want to say something about what Esther has said about the body, the understanding of how body works. Because in my opinion, it's very important. Let's say one thing. Climbing is a sport based on movement, right? So if you understand your body, if you are very good in your body control, you are going to be a better climber, because you are going to solve better the cracks, for example. Because you are going to be more efficient. So if you apply that knowledge in every exercise you are doing, handboarding, pull-ups, push-ups, rings, training, if you are positioning well your shoulders, your wrists, your elbows, your core, your hips, you are working also in being a better climber. At the same time, you are preventing injuries because you are putting your joints in the good position.
Yeah.
Not to be hurt.
Yeah, I think giving the same respect that you give to climbing to all of the exercises that you're doing
Exactly.
is really important.
It's very important. You are working on being a better climber in every exercise you are doing. Even stretching, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You are training when you are standing up. You are training for being a better climber when you are, I don't know, you are lifting weights in the waiting room.
Yep.
And now, regarding your question, sorry.
No, that's fine.
My process about the tendinosis. Yeah, that's true that when you get injured, the hardest part of it is losing your identity as a climber.
Yeah.
This is really hard and this is very painful and I feel very sad in first place. But especially if I can't practice any sport. I need to do something. Sometimes I have been able only to walk, for example. That's enough. It's a solution. But I always figure out some exercise to do while I'm expecting to my injury be healed. Because time is key.
Right.
There is a time you need for the tissue heal a little. And for that time, I always think what I can do. In this case, with my elbow injury, I started working on my legs, on my core, even more than before, and sometimes with the other arm, because I had only to expect for 2 weeks, sometimes for using more the other arm. So 2 weeks working with only my other arm, it doesn't feel bad for my body.
Right.
It goes right. Isn't it, sir?
Yes.
And I don't know, I invented exercises for doing because it wasn't painful when I was supinating. In pronation was painful, but not in supination.
Okay.
So I was doing handboarding very, very soft. I wasn't training really, only feeling I was a climber. So I was doing exercises in supination and with my elbow a little flexed for avoiding the pain, and thinking about another things to improve in my training, not only my forearm, other aspects, technique and understanding my body, how my elbow moves for doing every exercise, because pain was like a signal of my extensors were working. So this was really interesting to me, because I was mastering my body even more, because I understood how the elbow, how the forearm works. So yeah, I enjoy learning every aspect of that. So I was enjoying in the process also, because I was realizing about a lot of things I didn't know before the injury, and I was searching about the topic, and I was collecting some ideas, and it was not very bad finally.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach, to find a few things that you can do that don't aggravate the injury,
Exactly.
and do those things to help yourself feel like a climber. And then you said you were gaining a level of mastery of how your elbow worked and how the forearm worked. And I think that's something that people skip over. They want to, when they have an injury, they want it to go away. They want to ignore that it ever existed and just move on. And in that case, it happens again and again and again. And in your case, learning why it happened, what's happening, how to work around it while healing it, that seems like it creates a little more longevity to me. Like you'll be able to do that for longer and keep that injury at bay, keep it away a little longer. So I think that's a much smarter approach to it than the normal, I wish this didn't happen, so I'm going to ignore it approach.
Yeah, and happen again. Because previous injury is one of the most important factors to injuries.
Right.
Re-injury and re-injury and re-injury. It means that you are missing something very important, and you are losing level, and you wouldn't want that, right? So not getting injured is a factor of performance, for sure. It's like finger strength, or like pulling strength, or like a capability to cope with fear and with difficulty. Not getting injured is a one important factor.
Sure.
For performance.
Yeah.
Ava, do you have a theory of why your elbow injury occurred?
Well, I have, some theories. First, I have been climbing for 25 years. And what you are using, you are breaking, right? Tissues are not forever.
Right.
And you have to pay the bill at the end. This is one of my hypotheses, age.
Yeah.
25 years climbing and 40, let me think, 47 years I have. So it's not bad that after 25 years, this injury. Second hypothesis is weight exercises. I was doing for a long time. I am always doing weight exercises. It takes part of my training, and I was doing very hard exercises for the shoulder with a lot of weight because I could do it. And I wasn't having any symptom of pain, not overload anything. But one day I started feeling the pain, and I was thinking it could be because of that. I don't know. Perhaps
when you started feeling that pain, did you just, like most of us do, continue doing those exercises and hope that it goes away?
I remove those exercises.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know other reasons, because sometimes it's there are several factors that you are not controlling, and the moment, and it's like in accidents with aircrafts, with planes. Is a summary of you say that is a sum of factors,
right,
that occur the accident. And another thing is that total control doesn't exist. So sometimes I think a lot about the factors, And I'm working now on my antagonists because this is a factor very important for strong people. When you are gaining a lot of strength in your fingers, your extensors are not in the same improvement.
Right.
So you are in a imbalance. So I'm doing these exercises forever because this is a factor affecting for sure. And when I have thought for enough time in the factors, I can't find the key. I forgot about it because it's better not to be so obsessed about controlling everything. Sometimes you can't. You only have the present moment to act. And this is the important thing from now and on and the future. And I can say also in my favor that any injury that I have has been repeated. Any injury in that I have has occurred again.
Right.
So perhaps I'm doing what I can for that.
Yeah.
I'm putting the means for that, but I'm not perfect.
Well,
I don't know.
None of us are.
Perhaps I'm going to fail again.
I try really hard to be perfect and it never works.
It's impossible.
Esther, you thought that Ava's approach to her injury was, I don't know if novel is the right word, but there were some really important factors in her approach because you were talking with her around the time that she was rehabbing this injury, right? So tell me a little bit about what you saw that you thought was important because you deal with these types of injuries pretty often.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she was rehabbing her tendinopathy in a similar way that we try to advocate, the way that we align people with our protocols at Grassroots, in that you are working with the physiology of the muscle tendon system, and so it requires certain input for healing. So eccentric loading and, kind of those parameters are known among, rehab specialists. But what was just, I guess what was cool for me to see was that, one, she individualized her therapy, which is what we try to do too with everybody. But she took herself as this researcher, a high-level climber, and human with emotions and, needs that way, and made a rehab protocol that suited her. So again, doing exercises that felt like there was input to her brain, into her system that was, some resistance, some load, some tensile forces that do give gets feedback to our brain and helps our endorphins and our mental stability. When I had a broken foot and couldn't walk, felt some severe, chemical imbalance. And I was like, what do I need to do to give my brain input to feel better?
Right.
So that's important because attitude and mood and emotions around injury and healing, and it's super important. I liked that she took the grip positions that were possible for her and used those to actually, again, still maintain some base strength. Again, kind of maintain her emotional balance. So if she couldn't do a palm down grip, she created a new little hanging device that she showed me a video of that allowed her to hang in supination. And I was like, what is that? Is that for your tendinopathy? Like, are you remodeling that way? Because I take it as a science approach. Like, what are you doing for healing the tendon? She's like, no, this is for me to hang because I like to hang.
Right.
And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's something I haven't necessarily done as much with my clients. And it awoken me to that need probably for people, for me to not only be so focused on what their tissue needs to heal, but also what their brains might need. And give people ideas that way to still participate in their community and at the gym and get out of their house and do those things. And it also it prepares you for return to sport. It lays the bridge for return to sport while you're still rehabbing, which is good. And then the patience that Ava had to tinker with her body and to really design individualized exercises that worked for her, given her high acuity and high pain, irritability with her exercise or with her injury. She had to really, really take it way down to baseline. She couldn't use the familiar tools like the flex bar or other simple tools. She had to really design these banded eccentric exercises done in the correct forearm position that were tolerable for her. And she helped her elbow flexors work under certain conditions. So she was kind of sending me these string of videos, and I was just impressed by the patience and the tinkering, and kind of looking at her body in a whole sense during injury, and not just in the part that needed the rehab,
right? But
taking the body and the injury process as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's, maybe that's how a researcher, how someone very familiar with their body would approach it. But in my brain, and I think in a lot of other people's brains, because we're constantly given this information, if you have this injury, this is what you do. Then in our brains, we would think, you, Esther, as a clinician, Ava, as a scientist, researcher, would stick to that protocol and that protocol only. So I think it's really interesting that this tinkering, this making it more individualized, you're advocating for that as well, Esther.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to stick to the protocol as if it's the only way.
Right.
So I think this could be eye-opening for a lot of people, that if we can make it fit us a little more, then it becomes even better.
Yeah, you buy in, you have increased compliance.
Right.
You start to build a bank of knowledge for yourself to avoid future injury. I think that individualization is super important if it comes to training outside of injury or in injury rehab. And I always tell my people, I'm like, okay, so there's these protocols, right? And I think we could both Ava and myself could get pinned on saying this is the best thing and this is the right thing and this is generalizable to everybody. But unfortunately, it's not. But we do try to provide these generic principles to our community because it's kind of the best we have, otherwise nobody gets anything.
Right.
But then I always say to them, it's like, okay, we have this set of ingredients and you're going to build your own recipe.
Right.
And, some people need 2 parts of this and 1 part of that and 3 parts of this. And it's like the same with nutrition, hydration, strength, flexibility, mobility, cardiovascular. Right. I mean, everything has to be this little, complementary set of ingredients that then bakes your cake. Yeah. And that takes time and patience and learning. But what's cool is you have, these people in the field that you can see or, gather resources. And I think everybody's capable of building that for themselves. And I think taking, climbing's interesting too, because I think it's so beta driven.
Yep.
This is the way.
Right.
And so if you have elbow tendonitis, you should do a lot of push-ups.
Right.
And I hear that and I'm like, what? Who said that? And why are dozens of people saying this?
Yeah.
Repeating this beta. And I think it's funny. So it's just interesting. It's in the culture of our sport.
Yeah. And
it's like, well, why are you doing push-ups? How are you doing push-ups? Mm-hmm. What is that offering your elbow? And are you budgeting, if you have a selection of things that you can do to stress your body, what are you picking? And, what's the debt you might be building that you have to pay later, as Ava was suggesting?
Yeah.
Or, so it's like this cost benefit. Why are you campusing?
Right.
Yeah.
Why are you
Right.
hangboarding? If you're a 5'10", 5'11" climber, shouldn't you just keep climbing, or do you need to be doing finger strength training?
Mm-hmm.
And shouldn't maybe you be building your foundational core and shoulder and hip stability and efficiency and function and footwork before you hit the hangboard?
Right.
But I think it's cool because it's an inspirational sport. We're motivated, inspired by people who are stronger, better, or, we appreciate their whatever, how they do things.
Mm-hmm.
And we can look at them and it's visual. We could see what they're doing and it's intoxicating and we get kind of swept up by that. But sometimes just going back to those boring basics is really important, whether it's with injury or with training.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we saw a really great example of that last night where during the question and answer, I'll go ahead and just call out the Shrine crew here. Steve and Jaewoo were very in the weeds with the really concerned about the details of hangboarding. And I thought your approach was great to that, Ava. And I think it speaks to what we're talking about here, that it's a more well-rounded, holistic. There are more important things than how many seconds you hang or what the exact protocol that the internet says you should do for your elbow. Making it fit you is the better way and fit your goals and fit your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very common in climbing. Like you said, it's a beta-driven sport. It's very cold and clinical. This is the way. So allowing some emotion into the parts where we think there's no room for it is really important. Mm-hmm. Now, have both of you worked with youth climbers as well? Have you done much work with youth climbers, Esther?
A fair bit.
Okay.
I think I'll let Ava answer.
I have no work with young climbers.
Mm-hmm.
I have only given some private classes to some of them, but I'm preparing a workshop, a course about youth climbing training. I have been working on the topic 2 years now. I'm giving some talks about it. So I'm collecting data for giving to the community when they are well prepared. Because this is a very important moment.
Yeah.
There are a lot of young climbers starting climbing, and there are many injuries are expecting them if you are not taking care of them. And they are also danger of drop out the sport.
Right.
If the parents or the coaches and the community are not aware about some approaches not very beneficial for them. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm giving some talks and I'm collecting data.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about this explosion of youth climbing right now? There's so many kids coming into the sport, and not only just kids, but beginner climbers in general, I think, have a similar situation. Can we talk a little about a general approach to how to progress in a healthy way instead of, I think climbing gyms, while great as a tool for getting better at climbing, also make it very compelling. They entice people to move too quickly through the grades and very quickly into jumping to little holds that they're not ready to grab. And they don't teach you the same foundation as climbing outside does. So I think there probably is a really good approach to it. And maybe we can talk a little bit about things that we should be on the lookout for as beginner climbers or as youth climbers or as parents of youth climbers. Many of my listeners are. So
I think nowadays one of the problems against a good approach is the mentality in competition from the very beginning. In young climbers, in beginners in general, because it's a business. Climbing is a business.
right,
now.
right.
So climbing gyms are organizing very frequently competitions because it's fun and because it's motivating, but also perhaps they are creating a mentality on the result, depending on the approach of the competition, of course. But the kids perhaps are developing a mentality focused on being strong, not in being skilled about climbing. And climbing, especially when you start to do it, it's important to be focused on the repertoire, the movement, the patterns, the
Right.
body, the body control.
Right.
In two words, body control. And this is especially important in the first stages for young people, until 12 years old. There are some phases proposed by some scientists, Canadian scientists. There are several phases well determined. There is one phase only for fundamental, only for basics of climbing. And then from 12 years old for girls, start the phase called learn to train. Learn to train, train to train, and train to compete.
Right.
From the puberty ahead until 14 years old, you shouldn't start that phase very focused on the competition and very focused on the strength exercises for your fingers and everything. Before that, it's better to be focused on the control of your body and acquiring a wide repertoire of how to hold, how to grab every hold, and how to move your legs, and how to move your hips, and fun, and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you added fun into there. I think that's really important.
It's the first
Yeah.
ingredient. If there is no fun, the kids are going to drop.
Yeah,
Everyone.
I was a gymnast, a competitive gymnast, and a gymnastics coach before I was a climber. And I've long held the belief that gymnastics is one of the best developmental sports that there is. But for girls, it becomes a dangerous sport really quickly. For boys, they can continue in it longer without those same dangers. And the dangers that I saw working in a very competitive, high-level gymnastics facility was that the girls at a very young age stopped having fun, and it became their job, and they were in the gym all the time because they were going to peak at 14 years old. So by the time they were 11 or 12, they weren't going to school anymore. They had tutors in the gym. It wasn't fun. The boys aren't going to peak until they're in college. So they're still having fun when they're 12, 13 years old.
Of difference between boys and girls. 2 years is too much. And girls drop out more than boys in sports because, among other things, social pressure for being for behaving and being in a specific way that society dictates.
Right.
And you are a person to be looked, and you need to be like society says, and many girls want to respond to the gender stereotypes, and they drop out.
Yeah, a lot of
Sports
pressure.
sometimes. But the climbing is not like gymnastics, because gymnastics is about automatization
Right,
of the exercises,
right.
and you need to start very, very early to do that. But climbing is based on mastering a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
pattern movement patterns.
Yep.
So is better to do that at the beginning until that age, 12 or 14, and then focused more on the physical training, because physical training has good benefits in very short time, so speaking. But the other adaptations take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's smart to be focused on that at the beginning. And then when you are strong and you have hormones in your body, go to the physical training,
Right.
especially for fingers, because you can work on your legs and your core and your upper body before that age. It's good and it's very interesting for the kids. From 10 years old, working on their body strength is really great, but not in your fingers.
Right, right.
With cramp hurts.
Yeah, learning to control the shoulders and the hips and
Exactly.
that stuff's
About
more
the
important.
Body control,
early.
about your shoulders, wrists, elbows. It's very interesting to do it from 9 or 10 years old, because you has your body scheme already,
Right.
and it's the time for learning about the correct position. And then when you have the puberty there, you take advantage of that moment, biological moment, for improving a lot your strength very quickly.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, to time your strength training rather than jumping into it too early. Do it when it's going to have the most bang for your buck, so to speak, the most benefit. Instead of trying to jump in earlier because that seems better to you. Yeah.
And
Do you?
Yeah.
I do have a little perspective on that, but Ava, is there some phase or delineation that you've known about when to add load onto kids, like if they are doing hangboard training, when is an acceptable age or performance level where you can start adding weight above body weight? And then the second question is campusing. Is it still the performance level at 513C, or is there also an age threshold for that?
Yeah. There are some studies about that. There's some recommendations about ages for starting handboarding by Volker Schoeffer. He's a German physician and climber. And he recommends not to start doing fingerboarding after the phase of peak high velocity, which is around 15 or 16 years old for boys and 2 years before for girls. Especially in that phase, in pre-puberty or puberty, is dangerous because the tendon is attached exactly in the same place that the growth plate is. So there is like a translation of the bones when you are crimping, and the kids got injured because of that when they are growing. So in that phase, I recommend not to do in fingerboarding. Before that, perhaps you can start to learn about the good body position for hanging, because climbing, you are hanging many times.
Right,
When you are a
right.
kid, it doesn't matter. So you need to teach to your kids to hang correctly from the holds when climbing, and when they are doing acrobatics in monkey bars, for example. It's a good exercise, or from the rings, or from a good hold, or from a sloper ergonomical for them. At 10 or 11 years old, they can learn about the correct hanging position, not training, only learning, with a very, very wide margin to failure. For example, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. In this way, they are learning also to acknowledge about their feelings, about the intensity, about the loading, about their body. And this is really key for training in climbing and for reaching the high performance level, analyzing yourself, and knowing about how to manage your training load. So you are teaching many times with simple exercises. And then during the puberty, you don't do anything about fingerboarding and campusing. If they are very strong, perhaps they can do some no-fit exercises, but without velocity, only controlling the position and the way they grab the holds, only for working on the pulling strength if they are strong and they are talented. Right. Otherwise, it's better not doing that. And regarding weighted hangs, not until after puberty, for making sure 18 years old for boys and 2 years before or so for girls. But in general, as a bottom line, after 16 years old in boys, 14 years old in girls, not doing handboarding as a training tool itself, like everyone, is better. And 2 years more for added weight in general.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember as well that there were a lot of years prior to hangboarding being a popular tool that people gained really high levels of finger strength just through climbing. So for those parents who are very eager to get their kids on hangboards to help their finger strength, it's not the only way to gain finger strength. You can develop a fair amount of finger strength just through really intentional, really deliberate climbing as well.
Yeah, but if you think a little, you need to pay the same attention or
absolutely
be careful, the same while climbing and when you do fingerboarding.
Yep.
Because if the kids are crimping all the holds, right, and the holds are less than 1 phalanx, less than 20 millimeters, they are crimping. So it's the same. No, it's better. They do fingerboarding in this case,
right?
Because you are controlling the parameters, and when they are climbing, they are not. So you need to educate your kids and the coaches and the community not to use very small holds with kids, and not very reaching moves over crimps.
Yep.
And learning about using other type of holds because open hand is safe. And about educating about the margin to failure to the kids also. How much is for you this hold? How difficult is for you? From 1 to 10, what number you say is this hold for you? It's 8. Uh-oh. Okay, you try once or twice
Right.
and not quickly.
Hmm.
And put very well your foot.
Right. And not while you're really tired.
Yeah, of course. So it's not that easy than that. Not doing fingerboarding and it's safe. No, it's many things.
Yeah, I do think American gyms have done a good job of making it safer by their hold selection. It's pretty rare to go into an American climbing gym now and see crimps. There just aren't that many of them anymore. And while that may hold back adult climbers because they never get the option to crimp while they're in the gym, it's definitely better for young developing fingers to climb on those open-handed holds. So,
Yeah, good.
do you see kids with common injuries, Esther? Are they coming in with something common, or does it seem to be kind of all over the board to you?
I think probably fingers are probably the more common injury among kids, and shoulder injuries. Those are the two I see. And the experiences I've had more than treating a lot of kids in the clinic has been spending some time with youth teams in the Salt Lake Valley momentum climbing team, and some other kind of team regional meetings, and have had the opportunity to instruct kids on basic body organization and mechanics.
Good.
And I think that's where we need to be spending our time, directly educating the kids, and maybe more importantly, starting to educate the people that are coaching and teaching the kids, whether it's kids on teams or just new climbers or young climbers entering into the sport. Because like last week, I was at a coach's kind of instructor team meeting. And again, the opportunity to educate now the coaches and instructors about body mechanics and body awareness and organization. And I would say that everybody needs that education, but it needs to be disseminated from, the bottom up and the top down. And so putting investment and time and energy into, as Ava suggested, body control. And that's just across the board, whether you're a youth or an adult, for injury prevention, for performance, and efficiency and longevity in the sport.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's huge. When we do our team workshops, coaches workshops, they're very much movement and mindset based. On methods of teaching kids new movements and teaching them better tension and better control, and better control of dynamic movements, as opposed to just flinging themselves around, which is something that I think happens pretty quickly and naturally for kids because they come into a gym set by adults. All the holds are really far apart, so they learn to jump really quickly. And then as they move through the grades, the holds get smaller and smaller, and they've gotten really good at jumping, but not really good at staying in control and engaged when they're latching the next hold.
Right.
So I think we've created some benefits to the kids in terms of grip selection, but then also we've created dangerous situations for them in the gyms. So I think it's important to teach the coaches, teach the kids themselves more about how to control their bodies in those situations and what control means.
Right. Yeah. And starting with static hanging and hanging right and that engagement. And if that's not attainable, then looking at the off the wall exercises that allow you to build that strength and stability and motor control. Because it's not so much like it is in older adults having this, stiffness, this mobility, flexibility issue to get into proper positioning. For kids, it's stability and awareness. And I've walked in on and taught these kids, and not one of them was, in my opinion, hanging in the most optimal way. But they learned so quickly.
Right.
You give them a couple cues and you give them a couple off the wall exercises and they got it. And they actually connect the dots that I feel stronger.
Right.
And they feel more resilient. And that just builds a whole different, I think, mental perspective and strength and for them moving forward with their performance. But so yeah, the hanging ride and doing a proper push up and a proper plank and a proper pull up and those basics, and then the lower extremity kind of hip extension, posterior chain strength, I think is a huge missing link that kids aren't necessarily aware of their lower bodies and that connection to lower extremity and paying attention to footwork and how that can offset injury of their fingers and shoulders.
Yeah. Are there ways that coaches can reach out to you if they're interested in having you come out? Is this something you just do here in Utah?
No, yeah, I would like to start to travel, and that's something that starting to develop, potentially with like Momentum Climbing Gyms is going and doing some education in their new gyms in Washington and Texas, and trying to just grab, more people at a time to provide this education. So for sure, I'm interested in that on a larger scale, and maybe putting together some written resources and things like that for people to take a look at. But yeah, I think we're at the forefront of a really good movement in climbing to increase the professionalism and the research and evidence, and also just I think this feeling that there isn't one way, so that individualization and capacity to be dynamic with our thought process for every kid and for every climber. And we're right there right now, and that's why I think it's so exciting for the sport.
Yeah, it
is this time, and everybody's on board. Yeah. So it's a cool thing.
Yeah, and Ava, you said you've been working on developing a workshop for youth climbers. Is there a timeline on that? Is that something that's coming in the near future?
Yeah, probably the next year is prepared.
Okay.
All the contents. Now, honestly, it's prepared.
Yeah.
Almost, but I need to fine tuning a little the contents and put it in another way of delivering, because nowadays I'm only giving a talk about the contents, but I'm going to acquire more experience with them before giving clinics about that topic. And regarding what you said before, it's important, and that's why I am visiting some climbing gyms in Spain, only for observing them, observing kids, observing the classes with the coaches, observing their competitions, how they are, how they feel, what they need, what the parents say, what the coaches say, and I'm comparing with the literature. I'm reflecting about all the things. And what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to learn about them. They are teaching me how to do it.
Right.
Because many times we are seeing the kids with the mind of an adult, but kids are different than adults. They are dynamic, because they are developing the coordination in some stage. In 10 years old, for example, they are very stimulating for acquiring the perfect coordination. So that's the moment for doing all the work on that topic, about coordination, about jumping, about landing correctly, and about all those aspects in climbing. So you need to teach them, but you need to learn about them before.
Absolutely.
Say something to them, because they are showing you that it's important for them, the coordination and the jumping and the landing, because it's fun for them, because they are in the proper phase for doing that. So in that stage,
it's still fun for you, so I think that phase lasts forever.
Yeah, probably. And but it's so sad to see the kids in the podium nowadays, how their body is. For example, with the shoulders with excessive internal rotation,
Right.
and with the humerus pointing upwards and forward. And this is a signal that we are not doing well with them, because they are developing their muscles very quickly in one specific phase.
Right.
And if you are not doing before that phase antagonist training and education about the body position, they are mutating before you notice.
Right.
And it's too late, because they are very well developed already, and it's late.
Yeah.
You need to pay attention before that phase, before puberty, on the antagonist training and flexibility, on body control, because after that you lose the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the most important reason that there are people like yourself, like Esther, like a lot of the great coaches out there who are really paying attention to these things and really starting to implement some of these protocols and paying attention to what it is that these youth climbers need, and what's going to help them the most.
There are some advices, very simple. For example, Eric Hurst put it in their website. It's very simple. If you notice if the kid has any pain in the morning after a workout in the fingers, right in the morning, just wake up and they notice, you need to put him or her in rest for a week, or going to visit the physician for a MRA, because probably they have already some joint issue or a growth plate injury, because kids haven't pulley injuries, for example.
Right.
When their fingers hurt is because the growth plate,
Right.
or the joint, because they have half of like 50% of the kids has any issue on their fingers in any time.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So you need to pay attention to that signal in the morning, or any pain, because it's because their joints are swollen, inflamed. And in a kid, that's not good.
Right. We're trying to build long-lasting athletes
Yeah.
who love the sport, not just help them win tomorrow.
Yeah. If you wait, it's only a matter of time. If you wait for 5 years, your kid, your daughter, your son can do anything about training.
Yep.
Anything. But if they have dropped out, if they have getting hurt,
Yep.
they are not.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's a few years.
Patient.
Only a little patience. And there are a lot of things to develop in climbing. A lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you sitting down this morning. I know you were a little nervous about whether your English was good enough or not, and I think it's great. So I'm glad that
I hope it's enough
it's perfect. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to
to
sit
be
down.
understandable.
And again, to you, Esther, thanks for making this whole thing happen, and for giving Ava the space last night to tell her story. I think that gets lost on the internet when we're all just very concerned about the research and tell me what the best protocol is. the whole story gets lost. So I'm glad I got to experience that.
Yeah, I like stories.
Yeah.
So it was a pleasure, and thanks for making the opportunity for us to interview with you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the same. I can't say enough about Esther because she's very kind. And I had fun finally yesterday. I was really nervous. I'm not going to lie about it. Because the language, because people, I don't know, you never know
Right.
how it's going to be the thing. If you are going to be
There's always
good
going to
or
be a
not.
Steve Mason and Justin Wood in the audience who
How?
they're always going to be there who want to know about all the little details.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, it was great, and thank you also to you for this.
Yep. Big thanks to both Ava and Esther for taking the time to do this, and especially to Esther for putting this all together. Thank you so much. And like I said, you'll be hearing more from both of them soon. From Ava, the conversation you all want to hear. It's coming. Be patient, people. Be patient. In fact, I'm maxing out my hard drives with all these conversations, so you'll get it soon. Esther, let's get together soon, record some more. See, addiction. I can't shake it. It's an addiction, period. You can find both of these women on the internets. There will be links right there in the show notes on your Pocket Supercomputer to both Ava's site and Esther's site and how you can reach out to them. Like I said, if you're in the Houston area, please look us up. Sign up for our workshops. We would love to work with you. And if you're in Oz, hit me up, info@powercompanyclimbing.com. We want to come to your gym, and I'm going to be there for 5 weeks, so I'm going to have some rest days in that time. I'm old. We'll come to your gym. Hit me up. Until then, you know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us at Power Company Climbing on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the Pinterests. You can search for us. You can tell people we're on the Twitters, but we're not, because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
We don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power, this time to build, power. This time to build 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 power. This time to build. 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 This time to build.